How do you feel about the assassination of Charlie Kirk?
It really doesn't make any difference in the big picture who or what the mechanics were that killed him. The fact is that over the last few decades, an atmosphere has been generated in this country that makes it a viable proposition. But what somebody forgot and why it has its differences is that martyrs motivate masses. And it is not just a message, but who the messenger is. And if you take out the wrong messenger, you elevate the status of the message. Now, there is a great deal of debate on how the shot occurred, whether it's real, and the conspiracies that exist. But the real deal is that you've got, as I mentioned earlier or before, you've got some very highly motivated people who are fanatical about their cause, that rainbow cult thing. I'm not talking about the gay community. I'm talking about the rainbow cult that a lot of them don't like. It is highly motivated. It is the equivalent of a new religion. And new religions tend to evangelize. They come up with jihads. They come up with persecutions. They burn their witches at the stake. They are holier than thou, and they take people out, and that looks like the motivational factor for whatever elements are behind him dying. Kirk reminded me of, and with certain very important differences, of a young Jerry Falwell, who appealed to a group of people that was very alarmed about 40 years ago with how their code of conduct, their value system, etc., was getting yanked out from under them. Maybe we should have listened to them. They called themselves the moral majority at the time. And a lot of people said, oh, they're cranks, they're evangelistic fanatics and all of this, but they did have some valid points. And we kind of got beyond that in one sense, and now we have a glorification of dysfunction that is manifest. We have decadence and depravity. Nobody has a principle or a purpose, and everybody seems to hate themselves and want to be something else other than what they are if you listen to mainstream media. And it's not a healthy environment. And they made a martyr out of somebody that had a very large following. A very large following had developed, and that crossed a whole lot of lines. I know some young black guys that are really upset about them taking him out. They expressed to me the sentiment that they were tired of people telling them that they were inferior to somebody that was supreme over them, and that they couldn't make it and they needed help to make it, and somebody had to take care of them, and they didn't like that. So Kirk was giving them a rah-rah on an alternative way of looking at the world. Be proud of yourself. You know, some people get great joy in life about taking care of their business. TCB. Duty, honor, obligation, accountability, responsibility. The deeper the adversity that you overcome, the more you have going for yourself. You are a warrior if you slay a great enemy. If you just stomp on somebody that is not a challenge, you haven't done anything. So he was giving people an opportunity to slay dragons in a righteous fashion, and give them a cause and a purpose, which is not what we were getting from the communications, entertainment, and news industries. So Charlie Kirk will be remembered.
How you feel about the people that call him a racist?
I don't buy it. When I take the context of what he said, I mean, think of it. Some people are just flat out idiots. Look at Jasmine Crockett, who seems to have actually gone to school in Memphis at a very elitist private school. Rhodes College, founded by the followers of Cecil B. Rhodes, who implemented apartheid in the 19th century in South Africa. She went to, let's see, what was it, if I'm not mistaken, Thurgood Marshall Law School, which is a medium-tier law school. So she likes to play like she's ghetto, but she's not. And she is what Charlie Kirk was standing against. So if Charlie Kirk called her some things that her fans find unsavory, but they happen to be truthful, well, why not? You can say them. Plus, the other thing is frankly, the U.S. government finds nasty things to say about the People's Republic of China, vice versa. The rocket man who runs North Korea doesn't have much nice to say about the United States and vice versa. Everybody calls everybody bad names when they represented an adversary, and everybody spends a lot of money with the CIA, NSA, national security apparatuses. You have British MI6, French intelligence, Saudi counterintelligence, the Mossad, Egyptian intelligence networks, the former KGB now morphed into the Russian intelligence network the Chinese do to find out what somebody's doing on the other side. So they have critical analysis that they do, and there's nothing wrong with doing a critical analysis on anybody, and if it's true, take heed. So I don't find him being candid, and I don't find anybody has any built-in exemption from criticism. And some of what he said I agree with when it comes to some particular individuals. So I know my son and some of his guys, they got kind of aggrieved with what happened to Kirk. So I don't find him a racist. It's all in context. I mean, race in the United States of America and in the world today is inescapable, so it's inevitable that anybody that's trying to do commentary on circumstances is going to bring it up. Like Du Bois said 120-some years ago, the problem of the 20th century will be the color line, and it proved to be the case, and there's still fallout from that. Now, in the United States of America, every law that's necessary to address that problem is now in place. It's just you have to put the team together to do it. We have a push that came from the left to establish hate crimes, but I've always thought that hate crimes were an insidious danger to the republic, because if you do a historical analysis, it's interesting, but every single something that is a hate crime has been turned against the people who were supposed to be the beneficiary in 10, 12, 15, 20 years. And what it does is it restricts free speech. And if free speech offends you, grow stronger. Now, I come from a generation where for recreation in elementary, junior high, and high school, we ran the dozens on each other. Hey, man, I don't want to say nothing about your mama, man, but last night when I was over there, man, when you was asleep, man, you know, and then, oh, man, well, you know, what about your mama, man, blah, blah, blah. Now folk go, they talk about my mama, talk about my mama. Yeah, well, so what? You know, get over it. Get wittier so you can come back with your own repartee. And by the way, enhance your vocabulary so you know what the devil that is. If you take revolutionary movements, whether you're talking about Russia, the United States, way back 250 years ago, you talk about China, you talk about Vietnam, you talk about the Panther Party, the Black Student Alliance, anybody, when you're trying to get a movement, expand your vocabulary, because an expansive vocabulary allows you to communicate rather than der, and in simplistic forms, and it expands your ability to think about stuff. So grow up, buck up, stand up, step up, and do what you have to do. And that's the way you deal with it. The stronger and the more dangerous the adversity that you overcome, the better you are, and the more that says about you that reflects good character.
Yeah, it's being reported that the murder suspect, he was in a relationship with a trans woman.
Yeah, that seems to be it. And see, if you get it, I've been warning. In fact, last time I talked with you, I kind of warned about that. I said, you know, that side is arming up, and they are effectively trying to produce their secular jihad. I think I mentioned the last time, I said, consider Buddhism. It's an ancient and honorable religion, but it has no deity. You can have one or not and still be a devout Buddhist. It's about a system and a philosophy. And that's what we get with this cult, the rainbow cult, that has now been adopted as the official theology of many states, many cities, and for a while, the United States. You can't put a crucifix, a Jewish star, an Islamic crescent, representation of six-armed Shiva or Buddha or Confucius, anything like that in a government building or a school, but you can splash rainbow all over it. You can't teach the religion or the philosophy or the theology in a school, but you can teach the rainbow cult from kindergarten through 12th grade, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, with official sanction. So they were trying to turn this country into a place with an official theology of negativism where you can hate yourself instead of rising to your obligations and accountabilities to do what men ought to do. You don't have to be a man. You can be a woman, but you can't be a woman. You can just fake it because you can't do the things that women do, and you, in the process, screw up this thing that is developed all through the animal kingdom where the female is attracted to the male and the male is attracted to the female, and now nobody does boys and girls style watching the opposite sex because you don't know what you're looking at, but these people don't care that they're upsetting the breeding pattern for humanity. It is of little consequence to them because they hate themselves and they want to be something else. So you've got a philosophy that does not say, for example, back in the 60s, I'm black and I'm proud, or black power, or love thyself. What they do is they hate themselves and they want to be something else and take a moment to go take their children and go down like they're a pet and get fixed by the veterinarian. It's kind of crazy, but that's what we have is a counterculture that's set up. It's in minority status, probably 3 to 4% of the population would be in support of that, but they control the means of communication, or they have friends in the communications, entertainment, and news industry, and their position is constantly pushed. And we know from the Nazis and other people that if you tell a lie even long enough and loud enough, you can get anyone, including the liar, to believe it. People used to think that if you went to the edge of the world, you'd fall off. But now we have GPS and we can find our way, and everybody's got the app on their cell phone. So it's obvious that there's something up there in the sky orbiting around something round. So we know that the Earth's not flat, but you see, when you have a belief system, it doesn't have to be founded on reality, and that's a danger. I don't like him, but I respect his beliefs. Okay, well, why? Because the beliefs may be completely in error, and it's not tested by the empirical process of experimentation. It's not carefully developed through theory, mathematics, and careful thought and analysis. It just happens to be something somebody wants to be the reality, but does not have to be any more real than some of the stuff you get on a horror movie at a movie theater, or some of the stuff that you see in the video games. So reality is a thing that people need to get back in touch with. And Charlie Kirk was the wrong person for that side to try and take out, because martyrs motivate masses. And I think they did something that was counterproductive to their cause. And when I say they, I mean the whole movement that it is represented, and whether or not there are individuals who happen to be off on that freak side. And that's what I think. They're mentally ill. I've dealt with a lot of mental illness in my profession over the last half century, so something needs to be done for them. But we don't need to say, okay, you are an unfortunate who was born deformed and missing an arm. The solution is not to cut everybody else's arm off, but to assist you in compensating for your loss. But we don't look at it that way.
How you feel about all these people that's happy that Charlie Kirk got killed? All these celebrities.
Well, a lot of these celebrities are not what you think. See, you think of the celebrities, hey man, this is deep, man. We got to go make a move on these dudes. Yeah, man. Jamal, we going to have to make a move. We going to have to take them out. See, that's the way you think of the celebrity, right? Down, gangster. When you see the celebrities, oh my God, I almost creamed on myself. The part was so exciting. It was so rough trade. Oh, Charlie, you should have seen it. So you see, the people that are real are the ones that are talking about the stuff that you don't like. They aren't the ones that you have in your mind's eye about the down brother, the real live action hero who is brave and courageous and proficient in firearms and martial arts, and he dares to do what no one else does. You see, the person that's playing the role is a straight out sissy that you could probably run up out of the club if you looked at him wrong. So when you see them coming out against somebody that, shall we say, was not in favor of their lifestyle and worldview, you can understand it. Plus, a lot of them are subsidized. See, Hollywood is a vicious place. That entertainment industry has an enormous amount of money that somebody can corner if they toe the line. So they're nice, dutiful little slaves. In Rome, they understood that. And it's not that they didn't like their Greco-Roman plays and dramas and comedies and such like, and tragedies. And it's not like the Romans didn't go to their theaters and pay rapt attention to the performances, but they looked at actors and actresses as a low caste of people who, instead of dealing with reality, dealt with fantasy and make-believe as their careers. So you're taking people who have spent essentially their entire adult lives in fantasy and make-believe, and you're trying to act like they count when the real world is involved. They don't. They are just tools. They are called talent. And in the Hollywood industry, it's even kind of a look down on them. The hired help, talent, who can carry this idea into a semblance of reality. They can take sheer fantasy, sheer make-believe, sheer fiction, and they have a talent of converting it into something that people will accept as real. So the celebrity crowd that doesn't like Charlie Kirk or didn't like Charlie Kirk, I understand, because Charlie Kirk, by his very existence and what he said, was an embarrassment to their reality, which is you're just some little punk sissy who is willing to do the 7B thing, unbelt, drop your britches, drop your boxers, bend over, spread your butt cheeks, and get boy banged by some producer, director, or whatever who wants to push that. So no, we aren't impressed. You see what came out with Diddy and all that dark side stuff that he'd been up to that he did not deny. By the way, what you were looking at with Diddy was the pimp game, classic pimp game. And pimps used to suck more dick in the penitentiary than everybody but the pedophiles. But now, hey man, it's about pimping, man. You really want to be a pimp? Do you know what that means? That's about as unmanly and unmasculine as you can get. You are as far away from duty, honor, obligation, protecting those that you love as you can possibly be. So that's what you want, pimp your ride, man. See, it's become part of the vernacular, so the target of the propaganda that you want to diminish himself is doing it for you because he has embraced and internalized what you've been trying dutifully to put in his head. You've made your creature. The wolf is a wolf, but the dog is no longer the dog. The wolf can feed himself as a pack structure and leadership, the alpha males and females in the wolf pack, and dogs are all betas, and they get their kibbles and bits opened by their masters and mistresses, and they wag their tails and are dutifully servile to their human bosses. It's kind of a thing. Well, look, let me put this to you. Consider this. There are a lot of black folk, white folk too, Asian folk, Native American folk. They went over to the sand pile over the last 35 years. They got shot at. They shot some people. There were some that went over in the jungles of the Nam. They put it on the line. They got shot at. They faced death. They dealt death. Some that were in Korea, some that were in World War II. You can get even to the domestic scene. There were some people in the Black Panther Party, SDS, Brown Berets, and other organizations. They went out and they faced death. A lot of them got killed in the movement trying to actualize people's rights and liberties and equality. And you had some people that came in and they pimped it. They weren't out there facing danger in the military or in the streets for the right kind of thing. They might have faced death being suicidal because they didn't want to live. And they chose death not by suicide by cop, but suicide by neighbor. Provoke your neighbor into doing you the favor of taking your life, but in the meantime, in the effort to provoke him, you might take his life or her life. So it's not a healthy thing. So you have all of these people who have never faced adversity for real, who have play acted like they do, and are in this entertainment industry, this distraction industry, the propaganda industry, to get you to think in a fashion that's not in your best interest. And that's who we look at as leadership, not as people in the real world who actually can shoulder that mantle and take that war club or that baton and say, follow me, this is the way we go. And they haven't done that. They just play act. They are in the propaganda section. It's like Hollywood had all these war movies in World War II, Why We Fight. So you had these Hollywood celebrities who played fighter pilots, played infantry sergeants, played tank commanders or ship captains, and they'd never set foot in a uniform for real, and nobody had ever shot at them, but they were in the propaganda corps, and they had this imagery of great warriors. So the reality is there are a whole lot of people that are walking around that have done this, but nobody pays attention to them. They just pick these celebrities that have never been there. But there are a few celebrities that have. Okay, Isaiah Washington, he was in the Marine Corps. You had Clint Eastwood, he was in the Marines. You had the late Lee Marvin, he got shot twice at Iwo Jima. You had a very prolific actor in Western movies. What is his name? He wrote a book, To Hell and Back. The name, I'm ashamed of myself for forgetting his name. He was the most decorated soldier in American history.
Let me see if I can look it up. Hold on. He said he wrote a book called Hell and Back.
To Hell and Back. Audie Murphy, he played in 41 Western movies. He wasn't but 5'6", but this guy was a real live badass. He got Congressional Medal of Honor, the Quad Gear, Victoria Cross, everything you can think of. He got every medal as possible for an American soldier to get. Brave man. But he was in the movie. Somebody like that just playing themselves, that's one thing. But we have so many people right now who have never done anything particularly heroic that's real, and we hold them up as leadership. So, you know, the answer to what about all of these celebrities that attack Kirk, who gives a damn? Take their punk behind somewhere else and go man the devil up and do something for real, and start by standing up to this Hollywood bit, which gets into what we had with a recent firing and rehiring episode, Kimmel. I don't have anything against the guy. For 5 years, he had a survey, and I came out in his survey as the most trusted man in America. Barack Obama was down number 52 the last time I was involved in one he did, and I came out number 1. So I don't have problems with him. His wife was a big fan of mine. But what happened with him was not so much quashing free speech, it was free market. See, when you have these broadcast studios, they depend upon commercial advertisement. When you see an hour-long play, if you took out a stopwatch, you would find that the industry standard is 32 minutes of commercial advertisement and 28 minutes of content. So what happens when the commercial advertisers, who spend a lot of money through advertising dollars and sponsorships to have people convinced that their product should be bought, and somebody comes out and does something that defeats that expensive effort, they say, we're pulling our ads. So the studio says, okay, Kimmel, we're pulling your show because our sponsors didn't want to sponsor you anymore. So when those sponsors left, well, the man had fans within the industry, and they sought other commercial sponsors who said, well, we have somebody that's with us who likes, you know, the other side too, so we'll support Jimmy and we will re-sponsor it. So they hire him, and what they usually do is they cut back his compensation and nobody talks about it. And on the side, they can say, see, we stood up to President Trump, who's a fascist, who's trying to repress free speech. No, that had nothing to do with free speech. That was just market pressure. But you take advantage of these opportunities. And that's exactly what you got here. An opportunity presented itself, and propaganda masters say we can seize on it. We can do our things to keep the favor of our commercial advertisers. We can chastise Kimmel and pop him on the back of the hand, and everything will be all right, and we can look like we stood up to the evil Donald Trump. We can do our part to countering MAGA. So that's what you're really looking at, that kind of thing.
Tyler Perry, how you feel about the recent lawsuit filed against him for sexual assault?
I've referred to the Hollywood industry and the casting couch with the 7 B's. Remember, unbelt, drop breeches, drop boxes, bend over. See, that's a reality in that trade. So with the feminist movement, everybody is concerned about the heterosexual casting couch, but not the homosexual casting couch. So that is a reality. You saw Ellen DeGeneres. You know, I experienced being asked to go boost her pathetic ratings and appear on her show, and watched what she did around on her set. So yeah, I can understand how that stuff comes out. And it is a reality in what's going on. And if you listen to what Tyler Perry does, he's essentially anti-masculine. He downs straight men, particularly straight black men, at every opportunity in his productions. And if you watch some of his stuff, check out some of his things. What's the one with I'm Black or something like that, where the guy is dying of some fatal disease and he runs this cosmetic firm, and his brother came up with the formula. The brother had problems with it, but the guy that made the money for the family didn't care about the fact that it was carcinogenic and would kill people. So now that guy is trying to be gay, so he gets this plain woman who was a stripper, and he starts making her friend, and he sets it up so she becomes the person that helps run the company rather. So Tyler Perry's favorite subject is bad-mouthing straight men, especially black straight men, and making them look like villains. Meanwhile, somebody gay comes in and helps out somebody that's a plain Jane girl or foolish woman, and they prosper in the end. That's what he does. So when you look at his art, do you ask, does it mirror his reality? And if somebody's got a fetish-style taste for something, is that what he's prone to do to take advantage of a situation? Particularly since so much of what he produces and directs has a psychological flavor of having been somebody who was an abused child, or somebody in his youth got taken advantage of. So a lot of what goes wrong with this particular alt culture is that it has formed an alliance with people who are abusers of children, pedophiles, and such like. So you might expect to see fantasy reflecting reality and the opportunity to vest the same reality on somebody else being taken. Background circumstances.
So I take it you're not a big fan of Tyler Perry. How do you feel about him personally?
I think he's poisonous. The worst thing we've had happen is, I know Flip Wilson used to do it. It wasn't that it wasn't done, but he institutionalized this tranny thing with Medea. The industry pushed the hell out of that because part of their agenda was to legitimate and popularize and get accepted this transvestitism. It's a sickness, but they made it normal. And quite frankly, the character Medea in the real world would probably be somebody that would need a really serious beatdown for the things that were normalized through the presentation. Think about it. Oprah too. Roger King auditioned 350 women, and he picked Oprah. What he said candidly was he wanted a poster for, quote, ugly, stay-at-home female America. And she and her girlfriend, Gail, have been doing their thing, but the truth of the matter is, every opportunity that woman got on her show that was drafted, produced, directed, and enfranchised by Roger King was anti-masculine. Now, Roger King was an interesting guy. His father invented syndication for television. Our gang, you know, the Little Rascals, the Three Stooges, Laurel and Hardy, the old black and white movies, the old cartoons that were replayed on the kiddie shows, his dad set that up. Roger King was a 6'5" tackle of a football player who was a straight up man who liked his Jack Daniels. Great guy. But he inherited his father's business, which was known as King World. And he set upon expanding it, and he recruited Oprah. He recruited Dr. Phil. He was the one that picked her book club stuff. He's the one that ran her business, set up on, and then he died quickly with no prior illnesses of either a cerebral hemorrhage or a massive heart attack, depending upon who you listen to. He was very much into manhood and actually asked me to talk to his daughters about why they were having problems with men. One of his daughters had married a nice guy, and the other one, who looked like a beauty queen, who since died of breast cancer, unfortunately, was saying, Judge, how come I can't find a guy to go out with who's not like one of my friend girls with a dick? You know, and you see that as a real world consequence. So he discovered Oprah, he set her up, and then before she could get the foundation, he died. Now, if you go into OWN headquarters, you see some rather peculiar looking older women who represent the consortium that acquired the financial framework for what's OWN, and they run it. Last time I went in there, somebody was trying to sell a show. I didn't want to have anything to do with it, but I did it as a favor to some people I'd worked with. I saw two young black people in there. One was a gay guy that was out doing Michael Jackson and tipping lightly, and the other one was some young sister with her head shaved, a plaid shirt, bib overalls, and work boots. And they were down on the first floor, and everybody above that looked like they'd wear Birkenstock sandals. And I say that because that was a gag on a game show that I was a guest on. So that was a clue to something. But anyway, that's what it is. So that's part of the industry. Stedman, that's supposed to be her boyfriend. He lives out in the pool house. Okay. Every now and then you might see Stedman at a red carpet, and what you'd see would be what we were just talking about. So anyway, it is what it is. She and Tyler Perry have done a lot to wreck what was a beautiful thing with the black movement in the end of the 1960s and early 70s. She used to work as a gopher for a woman named Nettie Stowers that had a talk TV show on WSM in Nashville. Oprah was known as Miss Bad. Bad feet, bad legs, bad body, bad complexion, bad hair, and bad attitude. She had just graduated from TSU. That was in 1973. And Roger King found her a couple of years when he auditioned 350 some women to find, as he put it, a poster child for ugly stay-at-home female America. We became friends of a sort. See, what happened is I wound up being a Viacom show along with Judge Judy. And what wound up happening is we went to Paramount Television, which was Viacom, but it was top heavy with nepotism. So to get everything efficiently, CBS got assigned my show and Judge Judy's show by Viacom, and Viacom brought in Roger King, who brought in Oprah and Dr. Phil. So he had a special CBS syndicated unit with Judge Judy, Dr. Phil, Oprah Winfrey, and Judge Joe Brown. So he came to me after a few months and he said, this studio is trying to make you go away. You are their number one money maker. And do you take the stockholders? I said, I do. And that's exactly what they're telling the stockholders. I'm their number one money-making show, most profitable. And I help them stay in the black rather than the red, unlike most of the entertainment industry at the time. He said, yeah, they're trying to destroy you. He said, every time you catch up with either of them, they try to hold you back. You ever heard of that A-list, B-list, and all that other stuff? The paparazzi don't make the list. Your studios make the list. And the paparazzi and Roger King says your studio does not have you on anybody's list. So I'm going to fix that. So in a few months, I started beating Dr. Phil regularly, and in a few more months, I started beating Oprah in the ratings regularly. So for the last 5 years, I was with CBS syndication, including 2 years after Roger King died. I was either the number one or number two syndicated show in the United States for daytime syndication. And in some areas where they played me, like in the Southeast in prime time, I was number one in that. But you never heard that. All they talked about was Oprah, who was way, way below me and Judy in the ratings, and Judge Judy. And the other one that was tied with the two of us was Wheel of Fortune. So that was an old-time game show, and Judy and I, what we did is provided guidance to the American public on what was legally appropriate, and what I did was what was appropriate in a masculine fashion. Now, Judy was a little she's 4'6", 4'7", weighs about 80 pounds, and she had her own little issues with her and her husband, Shineland, who took over from Mayor Koch, who ran People's Court after they revived it, when it had been under Judge Wapner for a long time. And there were all kinds of issues in that. And she was a nice Jewish mama figure for Hollywood, which had a very large contingent of Jewish participants, so they responded to that, and I was a threat because I wasn't going along with their rainbow thing, although they kept approaching me about doing PSAs for them. I said, hey, that ain't my problem. You know, you do that, but I'm not. When I first started, I can mention this to give you some idea what the flavor's about. I hadn't had my show but a month and a half, and they had a big thing at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, the Statler Hilton Hotel, on the intersection of Santa Monica Boulevard and Wilshire. It was a nice party. I was a bachelor. I'd got this show, it was successful, and I'm looking at all these beautiful starlets, you know, so I like to dance. I'm dancing with all these gorgeous women, and I ran into one that I kind of hit it off with, so we sat down at a table and we were talking, and she got up, went to the ladies' room. She came back, says, you know that tall guy in that gray suit? I said, yeah. He said he offered me $2,000 in cash if I'd sign a note saying you tried to feel up on me. So guess who it was? It was the CEO for the big ticket television, the entity that was doing my show. So she and I went around and tracked down all of the women I danced with, and several of them said he had offered them money, but they wouldn't take it, so we got a written statement from him. So this was November 1998. The show had started in September 1998. So they'd already tried to set up this. So I hired a beautiful black woman who had graduated from Ole Miss, and I'd been her mentor, and she incidentally became the youngest licensed lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and I hired her to be my publicist. So we set up these directors, and we created a fictional woman. And my collaborator started going around to some of the Hollywood types and telling them that this woman was complaining about me trying to make moves on her. Now, simultaneously, we were filing affidavits under seal with Human Resources for big ticket television. And then subsequently with Paramount Television. So they came up with a letter from this fictional woman that she was supposedly complaining about me. So I laughed about it. I had my agent come over, my attorneys, and I had my PR person, and we went over there and stormed the meeting and said, bring over the lockbox from HR. And we opened it up, and we had the affidavits and how we had set them up for this scam that they were trying to pull on us. So in 6 weeks' time, all of them were gone, and I was there for another 13 and a half years. So you just have to know how to play the game that they played. And when they got me, I wasn't 19, 20, 25 something. I was in my 50s, and I'd been a criminal court trial lawyer and a judge, and hell, I grew up in Los Angeles, and I knew some of these folk that they thought were going to help them out. And it was funny. They put on a cocktail party, and they brought in all of these LA Superior Court judges, right? So I'm supposed to be impressed. I started laughing because the conversations, to their shock, started turning around. Joe, I haven't seen you. You know him? Yeah, he recruited me to law school. Yeah, he got me financial assistance for law school. Yeah, he got me a job. So you already know him. Yeah, we go back a long way. So they're taking all my friends and these juniors that I had assisted in starting on their careers, and they were trying to get me freaked out like, oh, see all the people we know and all the influence we have. See, that's the way they play that game. And you take somebody who is a naive country bumpkin, or some kid coming out the hood, or some kid that's been doing the 7B thing to get a part, and there's a female equivalent too, and they get impressed by this kind of stuff, but somebody else might not. So that's the way this industry works, and I guess that's a long way of getting around to talk about what happens in this industry. Now, I'm sure Tyler Perry is fine for what he does, and people love his work. Same thing with Oprah. She's an icon. But quite frankly, I think they have an insidious brand of mind crack that they've been purveying to various communities around this country for quite a few decades, and it hasn't done us any good. But, you know, that's First Amendment stuff, and they're entitled to do it.
You and Judge Mathis, is everything cool between both of y'all? Because I know he made some comments telling you to come see him.
Oh, he's part of that thing, too. Have you noticed at home with Judge Mathis with all of that rainbow stuff that they push? See, Hollywood tried to get me to do the same thing. I said, hell no, you're on your own with that. I'm not doing it, but he did. See, he punked out and joined the gang, and then he says he got out when his mama got sick. So he does his thing, and one of the most embarrassing moments I ever had as a black attorney or as a black man was in front of 5 members of the U.S. Supreme Court and the Second Circuit Court of the Judiciary. They were having a judicial conference. They had invited me, Judge Napolitano, and Judge Mathis to lecture them for 2 hours on television in the courtrooms, because at that point, 20-some years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court and the appellate courts of the United States and other courts were concerned about opening the courts back up again to broadcast media. He declined to show, and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm rehearsing for a gospel play." So I found that embarrassing. You're doing a church gospel play and you miss out on an opportunity to address the Second Circuit Court of Appeals for the United States. I think there are 3 or 4 former members of that circuit that are on the U.S. Supreme Court right now. The Supreme Court itself is part of that circuit for educational and continuing legal educational purposes. And you missed the opportunity to do that because you're in a gospel rehearsal. That's clown show stuff. And then that crap he does about endorsing LGBTQIA+ on that At Home with Mathis. And the fact that when I was on, I was number 1 and 2, and he was down 150, 160 in the ratings, flunkying out, doing what he did, acting ignorant. I never said anything about him, but he wanted to badmouth him because he apparently likes that Joe and Ho thing with Joe Biden and Ho Harris. And he got offended that I called his little fake negress a hoe, which she is. She's entitled to her sexual activity, but she did it for money and advantage, and that makes you a hoe if you do it for pay. Now, bottom line is he came up and said something like, if he called my wife a hoe, he'd have to answer to me. Well, I haven't called his wife a hoe, but I hope for his sake she ain't, because, if you are, I might tell you what you are. So he talked and he wanted to badmouth it, and I think he was trying to deal with bravado, but, he said, somebody know where I can find him in Memphis. Well, you want to be a fool enough to set yourself up for that, go right ahead. I thought it was foolish, and I thought it was typical, and that's why he lasted so long. I was number 1 and number 2, the number 1 money-making show for CBS that they bragged to their stockholders was making the whole operation so profitable, and he was down there. He's one of those shows that makes low-level commercial money, and you can keep on forever, and he was amenable to pushing the rainbow cult. So he did that. See, what they do is they'd invite you to parties, and you go to the party, you first get in this, and oh man, look at all the beautiful women, and then wait a minute, what's that going on over there? It's no, and you pull your cell phone out, baby, what you doing? Look here, I'm leaving this set, let me drop by and pay you a visit. So I'm getting the hell out of here. And then they start inviting you back. You go back to them, not me. And see, they'd get you caught up in there and get trapped if you fell into that. They take your belt off, help you pull your britches down, your boxes, and bend you over. And, you'd be part of the initiate, that's a catechism. And you'd be helping that out so they could poison the minds of America with, you have no purpose, you have no cause, get rid of your masculinity, be emotional, and, get upset and think somebody's supposed to take care of you. So that was a poisonous thing. So like some other people who were involved, I refused to get involved with, not involved, but other people who were doing stuff. I refused to get involved with that social scene in Hollywood because it's just poisonous. Just completely poisonous, and they have an agenda. So, yeah, that's Mathis. He can take his punk self somewhere else and go deal with his rainbow fixation. What is it, all his children rainbow, man, what have you not been doing? They're so sensitive. But anyhow, I found it funny.
Yeah, he called you a fake tough guy.
Well, I'm a man. I've tested my personal courage and bravery. I haven't let myself down. I've been in some interesting adventures that he hasn't, and I didn't run. I've done some things in the real world he hasn't, so that's okay. I don't consider myself a tough guy. I consider myself a man. I've met Muhammad Ali. I had a long conversation with George Foreman. We used to hang around, you know. He was a nice guy to hang with. I knew Huey Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, you know, all this bunch. Geronimo Pratt, a.k.a. G, some other people. I was a bodyguard for A-Trap Brown for a week. My good brother was probably one of the foremost martial artists in the world, and Black Belt magazine said he was probably the most dangerous human alive in North America. And if you want to look him up, that's Clifford Stewart, late of Los Angeles, Dr. Clifford Stewart. So we did our share of adventurous stuff growing up and when we were around in Los Angeles. And I have been in a legal case where it was out in the country dealing with rural matters and some stuff where we just send somebody on a motorcycle because nobody had cell phones then. And when the sheriff goes up, I got a 45 auto in one hand and a 357 in the other, in a briefcase with a court order, and the sheriff is yelling, boys, put them muzzles down. We can't have all this. What the hell's going on? Sheriff so-and-so, there's a court order over there. These people are trespassing. So, yeah, I've been there. So he hasn't. Bottom line is I think I'm a tough guy. No, I just think I'm a man who stands up for his duty like a whole lot of other people I'm personally acquainted with, or was before they left us. So, you know, it is what it is. Just be careful when you're selling wolf tickets. You know what a wolf ticket is?
Yeah, I know what a wolf ticket means. Bluffing, pretty much.
I've seen some wolf tickets sold, and some people bought a whole book of tickets for the premiere performance and wanted an encore and a curtain call when it got through. So he's selling wolf tickets.
You heard how Snoop he took his grandson to go see the movie Lightyear, and there was a scene in there where a lesbian couple was having a baby, and the grandson he asked Snoop, how is they having a baby, and Snoop he didn't even know what to say, and he said that made him scared where he didn't want to go to the movies no more, and he got backlash for making that comment.
Well, you just have to take it. You have to be righteous. They used to have a thing called At Home with Snoop way back late 1980s, 1990. Actually, it was pretty profound. He was at home, his brother would hang around, his wife was there, and his children were there. And there were some interesting things about manhood that came out. Now, I met his mother, and we became close friends about 25 years ago out in Los Angeles. And we did some programs together. She had a master's degree, and she used to tell me about how Snoop was a scholar. But they had this idea in what's now the LA County Unified School District, that they, instead of doing what they ought to do, they would just bus a few kids so they could nominally integrate the schools. And California had never had any official segregation. So they were talking about she was telling me about the flack that Snoop caught when he was a brilliant scholar at a mostly black middle school, junior high school, and then he went to a place where he was one of, I think she said, 3 or 4 black kids in the school, and some of the hell he caught. So he decided to be a tough guy, and then he went off on image with this, but he was still essentially a well-learned individual. So from meeting his mother, and what she stood about is a staunch defender of manhood, I can see how he would say that. And see, that's one of the problems right now where Hollywood has taken its access to children and attempted to propagandize them to be receptive to that particular theology. And I have 2 grandkids myself, and I know other people that have grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and we're all disturbed about what do we do when you take them to see what is supposed to be a kid's cartoon that they want to see, because all of the rest of their peers, the kids, are going to see these cartoons, and you see that kind of poison. It's not healthy for anybody, because you can't teach them sexuality. As children, we just don't teach them overt heterosexuality because it's just unseemly. But you teach them the homosexual substitute for that, and you give them an implication of, wait a minute, what is this going on here? What is the meaning of this? You know, mom and dad is one thing. What is this mom and mom bit? What does this mean? It's all right to hold your guy friend's hand or kiss him. Well, what does that mean? Well, that's preparatory to him putting his penis up your anus or it in your mouth. Oh, well, didn't you realize that's what they're trying to teach you? Or you go do this, huh? That's what they're teaching you. They're conditioning you to the foreplay so that this just becomes a natural consequence. They're conditioning you to take the easy way. This is the thing. If you take straight adults and you analyze their lives by the time they get 50 or 60, the most difficult thing they've dealt with in their whole life is dealing with the opposite sex, whether it's your girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other, husband, wife, or whatever it might be, opposite sex co-worker. That is the most difficult thing for a human to do, is the complexities of dealing with the opposite sex. But if you don't have to deal with the opposite sex, there's a whole lot of grief in your life that does not have to take place, where you don't have to have the heartache, heartbreak, and everything. Man, what is she thinking? Wow, what does that mean when she gives you this look? Or what does that boy mean when he looks at, this girl with that kind of look? See, all of that's cut out because from day one, you are associating with individuals of the same sex. It just naturally flows together because there's no sexual tension, even pre-maturation tension. So when you tell somebody you can get your eroticism satisfied same sex, that obviates the need to learn how to deal with the opposite sex. That takes you away from being chosen or rejected. And it makes life easier, but in the long term, it's bad for humanity. So when you see this pervade to children, that it's okay for this to happen, they get acclimated to it. And now I think at my age, many decades past it, I can still remember some of the songs and things I got taught in the first, second, third, fourth grade. Remember them well. So in my mind's eye, I'm saying, what are these children thinking? What in the world are they going to be acclimated to when they're my age if this is what they're getting input into their psyches at the same stage I had this other stuff input into mine? Elementary school, got a job, sha-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. Get in that kitchen and tell your hoodlum friends outside you don't have time to take a ride. Got lots of money because I just got paid. Oh, I wish I had someone to talk to. All of these things where you talked about love, the realities of the world, you even ridicule stuff. 7-11 behind the boys' gym. Charlie Brown, he's a clown. Who? And then they talked about it. Who walks in the classroom cool and slow? Who calls the English teacher daddy-o? Who's down on his knees 7 come 11? See, they castigated wrong behavior. Now they glorified dysfunction. So it's, what are you going to think about 50, 60, 70 years from now? And what are you going to do in the interim 50, 60, 70 years of life when that kind of stuff is in your head? See, mama takes you to church, synagogue, mosque, temple when you are still in diapers. She might take you every week, several times a week, and then you have to go to a Sunday school, Bible study, and by the time you're 6 or 7, you're indoctrinated with the religion and you're a true believer. Well, our kids get taken preschool to see some trannies dressed up like harlot old ladies looking like madams in New York brothels 120 years ago. And they get read to. They see rainbow stuff. They see this type of thing that Snoop was offended by. And they don't go once a week. They go 5 days a week for most of the months out of the year for multiple hours during the day. And by the time they're in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they are indoctrinated to this perverse theology. And that's their mindset. What is it? Human psychology suggests that humans are, relative to their mindsets, written in stone by the time they're 7 years old. So here they are, by the time they're 7 years old, they don't just have songs and stuff about Dick saw Jane and, go Spot go, or Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, or whatever it might be. They have this that Snoop says it scared him when he looked at it. And think about it. Buzz Lightyear, he's supposed to be an astronaut. And they have taken the astronaut and Western character, and they've recycled them. So now they're supposed to push this kind of thing on the American public. So it doesn't go into the game with ignorance. Like what's the thing? Boys and girls, by the time they start approaching puberty, 5th or 6th grade, they want to know what's going on. On the heterosexual level, they have to go through changes to find out, or to have somebody tell them. But here you start propagandizing these kids when they're 5 years old, a bit with the alt style. It just doesn't work right. And no wonder we don't have families anymore, because the kids are being raised in a fashion where they don't get it. You ever look at what they do with PC comics, with Superman and Wonder Woman on the cartoon stuff that's for 8, 9, 10, 11 years old? I was looking at one of them. It was really weird. What the plot line was is Wonder Woman's girlfriend got jealous of her relationship with Superman. So this lesbian decided that she was going to break Wonder Woman and Superman's friendship up by feeding a series of lies to Lois Lane, so Lois Lane would go off on Superman so she could get the lesbian entry to Wonder Woman. Now, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, that's the plot line for somebody who's 9, 10, 11 years old to look at? Dude, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's crazy. So what do you think parents should do for their kids won't be influenced by this?
Turn the damn TV off. Program your TV so this stuff is restricted and your kids can't see it. the members of the Board of Education are generally elected officials. Turn them out. You don't have to vote for them. The people that oversee the legislation, you don't have to vote for them. Nobody says they own you. You know, and that's another thing. Black folk fall into that trap, and what winds up happening is they support fake, counterfeit leadership that's been bred from the livestock of King Cotton that is now pushing Queen Tranny, Queen Rainbow. So they don't have to put up with it. Take your stand. Sit at your desk or your kitchen table and help your kids do your homework. Do their homework. You don't know it, stay one chapter ahead. It's a good way of learning it, and you can learn something in a profoundly deeper fashion if you're having to teach it, if you have to teach it. Why is it that we approve stuff we're like in the Memphis area? To start as a school teacher, you don't even need 4 years of college anymore. You just need 2. You know what they start a school teacher with here? $28,000 a year. That's poverty. And if you went to a 4-year institution, depending upon what and where, you get 32 to 36,000 to start with. Who the devil is going to go into teaching? See, when I went to school, you know, you had veterans who were sergeants in the Army, used to leading young men who knew how to do it. And they didn't take anything. You weren't going to stand up to one of these guys and get defiant with them. You had these women who were brilliant women who were cut off from other careers because of the way society was. So you have women that would now be engineers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, business women. They were school teachers. So you had this cadre of very impressive teaching professionals who took nothing off of a child. No nonsense, no how, no way, would not tolerate disrespect, disorder. And we learned. The teachers that scared the devil out of us before we went in their classes because they were mean, when we took their classes, we really learned something for them. And now that we are old folk, those are the only teachers whose names we remember, is the ones who scared us before we got in their class and found out what real love was, which was, it's my obligation as a teacher to teach this child, this member of a future generation, to be able to be a competent adult in his world. So that's what I'm going to do, is teach him or her how to do that. Not what they want to do, what they're going to need to do, because the world doesn't ask you what you want before you have to cope with it. And it's not always about people. There are thunderstorms, there are lightning storms, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanism, there are typhoons, hurricanes, tornadoes, asteroids, meteorites, bursts of radioactivity and cosmic radiation. There is radiation that comes out of the ground naturally, not because somebody conducted a bomb test. So the world is dangerous. So it doesn't ask you, do you think you like this? I had a steak the other day. Do you think I was being fair to the damn cow that I was eating? So the world is not fair, and it's not good to teach the children that it's supposed to be mommy. So mommy's nice if mommy acts like mommy, and it would be a good thing if dad acted like dad, and it would be a real good thing that you say, hey, that's good for the time and place. You can nurture children, but you have to teach them too, because the rest of the real world is not a friendly place. You know, when it really, one little last remark. I'm a certified, PADI certified master diver, all right? I've been doing this 50-something years. I've had a few thousand dives in my logbook. And I remember going out on a dive in the Channel Islands off of Ventura in LA area. And we watched a bull orca that would look like 25, 30 feet long. And we watched this bull orca kill 3 dolphins, and the pod he was with fed off of them. So he caught up with us about 4 or 5 miles further on, and it was a big 60-foot boat. So he rears up, flops over the gunwale on the starboard side, and we list over there, and he's looking at us. They're very distinctive, and, it's like looking back at an intelligent dog. So about 3 weeks later, I was in one of the Channel Islands, off of one of them, and I was doing a fish counting thing in one of the preserves there, to sanctuaries for the fish where you couldn't fish. So I feel this presence in the water, and I look up, and what is it? It's this same 30-foot bull orca that I saw slaughter 3 dolphins. So here I am, 5 feet away from the apex predator in the oceans of the earth. And I'm looking at him, and he's looking back at me, and I'm contemplating being whale poop on the bottom of this shallow part of the ocean. But he was curious enough, so we swam back to the boat, and he swam around me and gave me a little display. When I got back on the boat, "Man, did you see that orca, man? That was the same bull that killed those dolphins, man." I said, "Yeah, I was in the water." We swam back for the quarter of a mile that we were off from the boat. But you see, when you face something like that, you're looking at something you've seen kill other things that are larger than you are. There is no earthly way you can do anything about stopping this thing from eating you if it decided to do it, other than maybe if you had the appropriate weapon, which gives you an appreciation for why weapons are natural to humans. And you start contemplating life, and the weirdest thing, I was down there, and I started thinking about somebody that had come on my show for arbitration, and they were trying to convince me that they were entitled to have somebody take care of them and treat them nice. And I was thinking, you should have been here. Do you have any idea of how preposterous you would have sounded had you tried to convince this thing that it ought to treat you nice? It doesn't care. It's a curious animal. It's very intelligent. It was going, "Oh, so these are these things I see up in the air on top of these boat decks. They're fascinating. I've one right up close and personal, Gives you a perspective on the world that a lot of people need to have. In other words, it's not your friend.
I know you real critical of Juneteenth. Can you speak on that?
Piece of shit. Piece of shit. I'm insulted. Let me tell you why. 50-some years ago, I was an intern at a D.C. think tank, and considering the subject matter, which was what led to the passage of the Civil and Voting Rights Acts in the 60s, what impact did the civil rights demonstrations actually have on events? One of my assignments was, what happened to the niggers in Texas? Why were they so long delayed in understanding that they were no longer slaves? Well, when I looked, what seems to have happened from the log entry of the U.S. naval officer, I think he was a lieutenant commander who was acting captain of a warship. What happened is he pulls into Galveston Harbor, and he sees black stevedores working on the docks, and they have people with lashes, whips, beating these workers. And he brings his first lieutenant. He says, "What the devil is going on? They're being treated like slaves." So when the lieutenant goes down there with the Marine Guard, he finds out that these niggas think they're still slaves. So what winds up happening is the commander of this U.S. naval vessel dictates a letter. and he has copies of it made. And 20 of those letters have the date of June 19, 1866. 2 of those letters have the date of June 19, 1865, which is right after the Civil War. The other one is 3 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, 2 years and some months, 2 years and 5 months after the 13th Amendment is passed out to the states to end slavery. 2 years after, well, a year and a half after Appomattox, when Lee surrendered to Grant. A year and a quarter after Sherman took Johnson's surrender, and the war was over, and these niggas still have not found out they were slaves. To compound the whole mess, General Sheridan had sent a unit of black cavalrymen from Jackson, Tennessee, and Memphis, Tennessee, down to Texas to announce to the niggas that they were no longer slaves. So they would not believe their black military brethren when they got told they weren't slaves, and they remained slaves for another year after they didn't have to. So I'm thinking that when I grew up, everybody used to know that, and they'd ridicule Juneteenth as that's those crazy, ignorant fools down in Texas that want to celebrate being a slave a year after they didn't have to be. So what was wrong with them? So we thought it was a peculiar affliction of folk down there in Texas dealing with their circumstances. So I was quite surprised when this movement developed that we need to celebrate Juneteenth. Why do you want to celebrate black folk being slaves for a year or 2 years or 3 years longer than they were supposed to be? Next thing, it dawned on me, I said, oh, this is one of those gay pride months, June, where they have all of these rainbow celebrations. And if you see the Juneteenth emblem, it's a fist. But guess what it is now? It's a rainbow fist. It's an excellent opportunity for there to be a black holiday that is co-opted and taken into the theology of this rainbow cult. So another connection between black folk and this cult can be established and claimed. You go into Black History Month in February. In February, that's where they have gay pride celebrated all over the country. You go to Aspen and they have gay pride ski races. They have gay pride events in Denver. And that's in February, and that's supposed to be Black History Month. So what time is this where you get this association between a century and a half of people saying it's wrong to treat black folk in this particular kind of way? We have to do better. So you get that goodwill and you associate it with something else. It's like Christmas. The early Christian church did not celebrate December 25th as Christ's birthday. It was celebrated at the end of February or early March. It's still celebrated in the Middle East with certain Christian denominations. But also to be celebrated on December 25th was Al Samain, which was a pagan holiday that the Druids used to celebrate. Odin was born on December 25th. Osiris, the Egyptian god, was born on the 25th. You have a situation where Mithras, the god of the Roman legions, was born on the 25th, and the pagans would not stop celebrating on the 25th. So what the Catholic Church did is it just summarily moved Christ's birthday from February, March to be celebrated on the same day that this pagan holiday was celebrated. So that pagan holiday is now looked at as a very sacred Christian holiday 1,000 years after the fact. So what happens is if you set a black holiday and make it a black national holiday to be celebrated the same time as this rainbow cult series of holidays, then people get to associating the two. And if you see the fist for Juneteenth and the fact that it is now decorated in a rainbow color scheme, you get the point. It was an opportunity to do an end run and further sink this cult into the fabric of American society. Take another thing, the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill. It doesn't do anything for black or colored America at all, and it doesn't even require a killing. Typically, a mob does a lynching. We think of it as a anti-black event, but you have to remember the old-time Western movie. Boys, ain't nobody gonna hang nobody in my jail until we has a fair trial, then we'll hang him. So part of the lynching process was in the wild, wild West and other places on the American frontier where white criminal elements were lynched by mobs who wanted a frontier justice situation. So in any event, what happens is lynching requires a mob. It requires a killing, right? Not under the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill. It doesn't require a mob. One person can be found guilty of lynching. You don't even need a death. If somebody is kidnapped or beat up, that can qualify as a lynching. So now what they did is they interjected sexual identity in this whole equation. So instead of you envisioning black people getting lynched and it's a horror that needs to be stopped, it's a hate crime, what winds up happening is, let's say, some black guy breaks up with his old lady and he's out at a club with some of his homies and he's over dancing with a PYT thing in a tight short dress with interesting boobs and hoop earrings and braids down to her butt, and he's dancing with her and they've been exchanging spit in the shadows and drinking wine, and then he notices that PYT has a heart on it. And he said, man, you a dude. And he busts pretty young thing in the mouth. That now is a federal lynching that brings in the FBI. See how they co-opted something and they turned it into something different. And that's what I think they set up this whole Juneteenth thing for. And if they want to celebrate something, why don't you celebrate the black troops that behave with outstanding heroism at Milliken's Bend? Why don't you celebrate the 54th Massachusetts volunteers for what they did down there in the Carolinas trying to take that fort? I mean, there are a lot of things that you want to celebrate. So, I mean, it wasn't the end of slavery. They had to negotiate some treaties with the American Indian tribes to end that. And the 13th Amendment was ratified by Tennessee in July, which made the 13th Amendment in effect. If you took the members of the Union, but you didn't have enough states to ratify that until the following year, if it came around to the old Union, rather than just those that were still part of the Union after the Civil War, before there was the reconciliation. So, I mean, there are all kinds of things you could celebrate besides being a whole long period of time after the fact, finding out that they weren't slaves. So, I mean, you know, it's crazy. What is there to celebrate?
I want to ask you about this and get your opinion on it. Obama, he made a comment about how every man, they should have at least one gay friend in their circle because it helps with understanding, empathy, and support.
Well, in his book, he's got several pages where he says he contemplated becoming a gay man. He got suspended when he was in grad school because he couldn't keep his hands off of certain boys. And he used to patronize certain bathhouses in the Chicago area. So He pushed that stuff, so, and then it comes out his caretaker in Indonesia in the compound he stayed in was, guess what? So it's not surprising. The typical homosexual male in America is married, or at least was. How many times have somebody caught their hubby? They've got a local politician here in Memphis whose wife is threatening to release a video she has of him having sex with a boy. Or it's not Sally Sue, Tamika, and Grace, it's Bob and Jamal and Tom that are having the affair. Look at Sheriff LaButte in Fulton County with Atlanta. He was a sheriff's deputy, a jailer for 3 years, and his prior experience is he was a porn star for gay porn. That's the sheriff down there. It happens. A lot of people in the civil rights movement thing. Bayard Rustin, he used to get in trouble all the time. He got locked up for dodging the draft in World War II, but he was a big guy and an athlete, and he got disciplined and put in solitary confinement many times for raping male inmates. But he was Dr. King's #1 guy, and that was the reason a lot of people wouldn't be bothered with the civil rights movement, is people like Bayard Rustin. Then look at the family connections. I talked about that briefly before. The guy's name is Samuel Hinckley, Hinkley. You may find stuff archived, but they pretty much stripped it off the net. Samuel Hinckley was an indentured slave, servant. He was a French Huguenot Protestant who indentured himself to escape Catholic persecution in France. He was one of the people who was counted 3/5 of, for purposes of apportioning representatives in Congress under Article 1. But he had 7 descendants who were presidents of the United States, 1 who was vice president, several who were governors of the United States, and most recently, one of his descendants through the maternal side, Barack Obama, was a presidential candidate running against John McCain, who wasn't a relative. But John McCain's running mate, Sarah Palin, was a descendant of Samuel Hinckley and a cousin of Barack Obama. Just think about that. When he ran against McCain, he was running against one of his cousins. Dick Cheney was a cousin and a descendant of Samuel Hinckley. Both Bushes were cousins of Barack Obama because Obama's maternal grandfather was George Herbert Walker Bush's first cousin. George Herbert Walker, who founded Halliburton, which was caught up in that whole justification for weapons of mass destruction, justifying the U.S. to invade Iraq. That was a descendant of Samuel Hinckley. So all of these people are family members. And perhaps Barack was just a freak in the family. Brad Pitt's a relative too, and so was Warren Buffett. So is Warren Buffett. So they're all cousins.
Cardi B. How you feel about Cardi B?
Oh, God. One of the dangers about Hollywood is for the last 120 years, since the turn of the 19th, 20th century, boys and girls all over the world have looked to Hollywood and the entertainment industry as models for appropriate behavior. Whether you're talking white, black, brown, red, yellow, the things they say, the way they dress, the way they walk, talk, and carry themselves and ideate has a great deal to do with the celebrities they watch. Now, what does Cardi B stand for, and what does that do for the young girls who will ideate on being just like her? Does that produce mothers? Does that produce young ladies who walk into a room and everybody says, hey man, watch your mouth, man, there are ladies present. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. And when they get to be grown, 40, 50 years old, and they walk in the room, is everybody going to straighten up because that's somebody's mama? Is that a dignified lady who is acting appropriately, or is she going to be cussing, acting more whorish and wild than anybody else in the room? See, it's what do you put up as role models, behavioral models for the young people? So why do we push that as an example? I mean, preachers used to preach from pulpits about how that's sinful and how that's not the way it's done. And they used to threaten fire and brimstone. Now they sit there and they bring those people to their churches and get all puffed up when that kind of somebody walks in front of the congregation. I don't know her personally, don't want to know her, but what she stands for is not good. Yeah, like what? And then see the thing that gets me in politics now. The blues, they want you to go vote because somebody like her is twerking, and that's supposed to inspire you to vote. What the devil is wrong with that picture? You know, I know some what used to be black female superstars. Hell, I used to date at least one. And they could be sexy, but they also were ladies. So what happened? What made the translation between being a sexy woman with dignity and refinement, class, and what's now held up as a modern counterpart looks like she just been out street walking and waiting on her pimp to pick her up and take her to the club. Think of the young girls that are ideating on this. They will be mothers, and what's that doing to future generations? They will be grandmothers, and what's that doing to future generations? And oh, by the way, once it's on the net, it doesn't go away. So, you know, understand in 10, 15 years, somebody's sons are going to be embarrassed on the playground. Hey, man, I saw your mama the other night. No, man, for real, man. You know, check this video out, man. Man, that's your mama, man? Or that's your grandmama? Think about it. What do ballerinas wear? Tutus, right? Ballerina is about as formal as it gets, right? When it comes to dancing. Ballerinas started off as a form of burlesque back in a time when one just didn't go too far, when the way ladies wore ankle-length gowns to go places. And here's somebody with a short tutu. You see, it evolves. You get Janet Jackson does a microsecond wardrobe malfunction with a huge piercing that is more covering than most bikini tops, and everybody has a fit. But then you get ugly-looking Lizzo, the hippo, out in front of a Lakers game with her bare behind, twerking for several minutes in front of a whole lot of young adolescent boys and girls that are watching and ideate off of this. Things change. Is that for the better? And then Cardi B, what did she say about she used to drug her tricks? I mean, come on. I know we had one running for president, but is it supposed to be a good thing that a woman brags about the fact that she was a practicing prostitute and how she turned tricks? And you holding that up as ideation? That that wouldn't have, they'd have thrown you out of the boardroom for even suggesting that kind of thing some years ago. Think about it. So why is the American mainstream entertainment media putting her out there like that? They used to not do that. I mean, that was a way to get yourself ruined in Hollywood. They'd keep it secret. They spent a lot of money with their PR departments to make sure that somebody being a freak didn't get out to the public. It's what it is it's an attack on tradition. In other words, traditionally the following things evoke respect, desire, craving, lust, sometimes respect in the opposite sex. So what are you doing to break that paradigm up? These horrible men are objectifying female beauty. Yeah, well, if we didn't, humans would still look a lot like chimpanzees and gorillas or Australopithecine cavemen. So, we don't, because the boys like pretty girls and the girls like strong guys. So we advance. Sexual selection. And what are we doing when we put that out there? You get somebody who is an admitted street-walking prostitute who brags about how she plied that trade, and then you put her out there as a role model for young girls and something to aspire to for young boys, where they get the idea that you can buy this, you don't have to seduce it, you don't have to court it, and even if you did, it's likely to betray you, so you can't trust it. How many times do we get this incel bunch of freaks, the boy freaks who hate women because they can't find one because they don't know how? You see, it's an interesting thing. It fits in the big picture.
And Lizzo, you not a big fan of Lizzo? Because I know you made a comment about her earlier.
She looks grotesque and she's an embarrassment. She shows up at a major Philharmonic production and she's using a glass flute that belonged to a president of the United States of America. All of the women there are in formal ball gowns down to their ankles. The men have on white tie and tails, and she shows up naked with a flimsy little piece of lingerie on, looking like a hogzilla, playing that glass flute. Yes, she has talent, but what is she doing? Take Sports Illustrated. Tell you where it's progress to. Sports Illustrated starts off, and it still is there. You get the prime examples of male physical prowess. These physically impressive specimens of masculinity, football players, boxers, wrestlers, track stars, swimmers, skiers. They are the epitome of fitness. You used to have the women counterparts, the models. They were beautiful, toned bodies, looked like race horses. And now you got fat slobs on there that look like they couldn't run from the front porch to the sidewalk. And that's supposed to be female beauty? Well, what did you just say about the boys that are still in there looking physically fit? Superman-style specimens of masculinity, and now they get Miss Piggy. And I'm sorry, I walked in a barbecue place not long ago, and I'm looking at the wall, and there is a full-size poster of Miss Piggy. And Miss Piggy used to go look grotesque. Remember when she used to chase her Kermit? And Kermit would be trying to get away. Now I'm looking at Miss Piggy, and Miss Piggy looks normal because most of the women in the place look like Miss Piggy or they're bigger. Not saying that they're not lovely personal women, but they're going to drop dead of heart attacks, strokes, or whatever, or type 2 diabetes because of the problems. That's not healthy. So what is this? The deification of dysfunction, of lack of fitness? See, they're glorifying people that couldn't make it in the real world. What happens if there is a natural disaster? These people wouldn't survive. So why are you trying to push this? It's compensation for an inferiority complex. That's the psychology behind it. That woman detests and despises herself, but she broadcasts it in a futile effort to convince others that she's proud of it. She's not. She needs help, not adulation. She needs help. I feel sorry for her. And it's not fair to Gloria. You know who Gloria is?
No, I don't.
The cute little lady hippo in the animation Madagascar that the giraffe has a crush on. This old makes Gloria look bad. So, I mean, hey.
Jasmine Crockett. How you feel about her? I know you ain't really, seeing eye to eye with her, huh?
An idiot. She's an embarrassment. She says all kinds of stupid stuff. She's got a Memphis connection. She went to a private school, college here, Rhodes College, founded by the person that set up apartheid in South Africa 150 years ago. So she went to that elite private school. Then she went to, Thurgood Marshall Law School. She's a fake. She tries to be ghetto, and she's just as boule as she gets. With her wig hat on and her barn's door-sized fake eyelashes, and saying the ignorant stuff she says. I call her coonskin Crockett. She wants to be a plantation mammy who is a special category, which is a third floor bed wench. And they have a male and female in the Democratic Party, and she's one of them. Went to Rhodes College, small private college here in Memphis, Tennessee.
How you feel about child support?
You should pay it. It shouldn't be alimony, but it should be child support, and women who don't spend it for child support should be treated very harshly. I have an first ex. She took the child support, put it in a retirement fund, and instead of spending it for child support, I took her back to court over and over again, couldn't get anything done about it. I paid it. It was much more than agreed upon. And now she makes in retirement more than she drew as a paycheck. She wasn't a very good mama.
That's an interesting statement you made. So you feel like people that use child support on things outside of the child, they should be treated harshly.
Yes, prosecuted because it's fraud and it's embezzlement.
What you think the punishment should be?
Same as it is for any degree of punishment, fraud and embezzlement. And in most states, the punishment is set by guidelines and is based on how much was embezzled or misappropriated. Like in Tennessee, Class C felony carries 3 to 15 years in the state penitentiary. But if you jump up and you steal a few $1,000s more, you get to a Class B, which is 8 to 30 years. And if you steal enough, it becomes a Class A felony, which is 15 to 60 years in the penitentiary. So it should match that same set of guidelines in terms of the money that was criminally obtained. Well, I wasn't even possessed of the TV program. I was paying $5,000 a month for one kid. I was ordered to pay $1,125 for two. I wouldn't pay that little. I paid $1,250 for two. And because my ex was so ineffective as a parent, is a bribe to her so I could get the oldest son and try to straighten him out. I said, I tell you what, I've been paying you $5,000 a month for two. I wasn't ordered to do that. But I'll keep paying you $5,000 a month for just the one if you let me have the oldest and see if I can straighten him out. But, you know, that was another thing. So it is what it is.
Do you think dudes should be getting married at this day and age, or you think it's pointless?
Being married has advantages, and it's also sort of a storm anchor that causes you to stay when, if you weren't married, you'd leave. Marriage is an economic institution. It's not just about love. It's about labor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, roles. Women love to shop. That's a sublimation for gathering, when they went out and picked fruits and berries and veggies for people to eat. Okay? We used to like to find our way. I don't need to ask anybody, I'm going to find this address. That's because we went out in the woods and in the forest and we found the game trails and the passages to the valley next to the one we were in. That's because we explore. Women bore the devil out of me when you go with one and she spends 3 hours trying to pick some damn towels. Hell, buy all of them. You know, well, I want to just buy the damn things, and they hate it. Why don't you just ask somebody how to get there? That was before they had the GPS stuff on the cell phones. So women like to do things that men don't like to do. Men like to do things women don't like to do. It's not that they can't do similar things. It's like that yin-yang design, you know, the black and white one, where on one side there's a big blob head and on the other there's a little tail faced by a white blob. Yeah, that's, women can do some things that men can't do too well, and men can do things that women can't do too well. Yin-yang. So it is what it is. And nowadays, you're supposed to not like that, because somehow or another having a thing to do that you must do becomes offensive. So you don't have to do this. You can be something else. Go get fixed. Go to the veterinarians and they can neuter you. You can have choices on what you want to do. But see, it comes back. See, this thing with the Charlie Kirk situation, where the assailant is supposed to have been in a relationship with a tranny in the midst of transition. We had something like that up in Nashville, where 6 people at a private school got killed, 3 adults, 3 children, and there's a big mess because somebody in law enforcement let a conservative journalist photocopy the diary or manifesto of the killer, and he indicates that he was very enraged that this school encouraged him to be a tranny instead of telling him just, hey, deal with your responsibilities. So he went through the whole 9 yards, and he got angry and went back and killed 6 people, and the law enforcement that rushed where he was, they killed him.
Crazy, man. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Judge Joe Brown, man. Great interview, man. Great interview. Very, very insightful, man. We addressed a lot of good stuff, man.
Okay. Well, anytime, you know.
It wasn't anything else you wanted to address, or that was pretty much.
Well, you know, one thing I always say, don't get caught up in trends, because a lot of times the trend is not based on reality, it's based on a falsehood. There are lies and there are lies. You can tell little white lies. You know, what was the Twix commercial? Baby, do I look good in these pants? And she had a big old butt, those orange pants, and he's cramming Twix in his mouth so he doesn't have to tell the truth. That's okay, but fundamental truth is something bigger than the occasional lie. Fundamental truth has got to do with, where are you leading the people? What are you trying to get them to do? Have you tried to push a theology that says by any means necessary to get the people to negate those things that have caused human character to develop as it is? There are reasons why the elements of human character are pretty universal: duty, honor, obligation, bravery, courage, purpose, cause, morality, ethics, making where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, where you are men or women of public peace, dignity, and order, who can be brave and courageous when necessary. All of these things come from aspects of the human condition and human necessity. And for somebody to try to propagandize people to get rid of those things is not healthy for that group nor the human race. So stay the course, do what you need to do what you have to do what is appropriate, and not what you know you shouldn't do. And if you have a cause, a purpose, life is a lot easier. You won't feel like checking out because there's no reason for you to be here. And if you overcome the adversity that comes about through something like that, you will say, hey, man, I really did something. And you'll feel better about yourself. So enjoy life. It can be exciting.